Hi, so I have been making this cowl that I was starting in the first Learn to Crochet video that I did, and I thought I would show you a nice thing if you get further on in your cowl that you might want to try. So down here I have started off with some rows of double crochet, what the Americans call single crochet, and double crochet is quite a dense stitch. And if you want something soft and floppy around your neck, a bit more drapey, then you can try trebles, or what the Americans call doubles. It's quite important to note what terminology your pattern is written in, otherwise you might do the wrong stitch. So here in the UK we call these trebles. Now you can see the treble is a longer stitch. So there's one treble stitch there, whereas the double is a short little thing like that. So it means that it's slightly more loose, works up nice and quickly because it's longer. Each row takes you further than a row of doubles, and it's really easy to do. So I'll show you that. And then as I went on, I thought, oh, let's put in some little windows. So this is like a mesh stitch, which is just a treble crochet with one chain between. I'll show you how to do that as well. So here we are, I'm starting to get long enough, got a little bit of yarn left, another couple of rows before I join it into a circle, into a cowl. And it's nice to just try out different stitches. It's very easy with crochet to sometimes not go into the last stitch, and so your row can be slightly shorter than the one below. It doesn't really matter if you decrease slightly, but just watch that you manage to go into the end stitch every time. So up here, last thing I did was a row of treble crochet, and that is what I will show you just now. So I've just finished the row, and so I put the hook back in, tighten it up. I'm going to wrap that round here. So normally you would do a turning chain to start your row of double crochet. Because trebles are taller, we're going to do 2 turning chains, and then this is going to be our first stitch in here. But the difference between trebles and doubles, before we do our stitch, we are going to wrap the yarn around the hook, or I kind of do the hook around the yarn. So let's do that again. So we're going to go wrap the yarn around the hook. So we have 2 loops on the hook. So we're now going to go into the stitch, we're going to loop, pull that loop through just like we would with a double. So we've now got 3 loops on the hook, which is why it's called a treble. Now we're going to do just like we did with the double crochet, we are going to pull 1 loop through the first 2 and only the first 2. So now we have 2 loops left on the hook. And now we're going to pull a loop through both of those, and that's the stitch complete. So hold that up. There's our turning chain there, and there's our treble going into that stitch there. Okay, so I'll do that again. So yarn round hook, which is what you'll see the instruction YRN sometimes, yarn round hook. So I've got a loop on there. Then I'm going to go into the next stitch, which is, so we've just done that one. So we're going in here now. I'm going to pull through 1 loop. And we now have 3 loops around the hook. I'm going to pull a loop through the first 2, and then we're going to pull a loop through the next 2, and that's our stitch complete. So there's our first treble, there's our second treble. So yarn round hook, into the stitch, pull the loop through, so you've got 3 on the hook, pull the loop through the first 2, pull the loop through the second 2. So this is nice and fast to work. I've just lost all of it because I started speeding up before I thought about it. So it's a nice fast stitch to work that makes the fabric grow nice and quickly, and it's less dense. So you would want things like scarves and jumpers, maybe hats, if you want things like homewares, bowls, slippers, gloves, things that you want something a bit more rigid, you'd probably want your double crochets. So now to do this window stitch, this sort of mesh stitch here, all you're going to do is after you've finished your treble, you're going to do a chain. And that's going to provide the little bridge. And then you're going to do a treble, but you're not going to go into the next stitch. You're going to miss that one and go into this one. And do complete your treble like that. So that leaves a little hole with the bridge. Now if you didn't do that chain, then those would be together and you'd end up with a much shorter row on the top. So we do a chain, and then we skip that one into the next one. Do a chain, skip that one into the next one. Do a chain, skip that one into the next one. So you can see you're getting a series of little posts with a hole in between. So these rows I've started off at the beginning and done all the way across. This one I've started doing holes here. That first one, because you're doing your two chain turning chains, you then do 3 chains and then you treble, but you don't go into the first stitch, you go into the second stitch. So we'll do another one, chain 1, then skip 1, and a treble into the next treble. So we'll do that across. Maybe let's finish with a few solid trebles. I'll just go straight into the next one without chaining to the end, so we can have a look, and then I'll show you what to do on the next row, because when you do your trebles over the window stitch. I don't know if anyone else calls it window stitch. I call it window stitch. So when you do your trebles over the top of your mesh stitch, the last one, then you haven't got the same stitches. So you can see at the top here where we've got our stitches of trebles. When you get to the top of the window, it looks the same from the top, but instead of going into that stitch there, which is rather tricky, we're just going to go into this chain, into this space, usually called the chain space. So if you're following a pattern, look for the chain space. So 1, 2 turning chains, and then we'll do just solid trebles from the start. And talk amongst yourselves while maybe I'll throw in a window. Chain 1, skip 1. So we will now, we've got to the windows, so you can do your treble into that one, which is the treble of the window stitch. And then your next one, you're going to do into that chain space. And then the next one's going into the actual stitch. I'm not showing this clearly. So your next one, you're going to go put your hook just through that space, like that. And that way you are no longer doing the bridge. So then your next one, you're actually going into the treble, just like you would normally. Because your next one is a chain and not a treble, you're going straight into the space rather than the actual stitch. So into the chain. So if you just went into every treble like that, then you would reduce your stitch count from the row below. So you need to make up for having done that chain and skipped one down here by putting one into the chain space. So once you've only got a little bit of the yarn left, then we can stitch the cowl together into a loop, which I will show you next, because probably just enough yarn left to do this final row, which will join the two ends together. Nearly there, and into the last one. So we've now got a little bit of yarn left, and our cowl is that long. We fold it up, that's going to fit nicely around our neck to keep our neck warm. So one thing you can do is you can cut this off and finish this knot by threading the yarn through here, pulling the knot tight, cut it off, and then sew the ends together. Or you can crochet them together. So your ends should be roughly the same length. So what you can do is do a row of double crochet. Go into here and also into the other. Oops, was I off the camera there? Wasn't watching. I'll show you that again. So we're going into the first stitch like you would for the next row, but we're also going to go into the end, the other end of the cowl, and then we're going to pull the loop through and do a double crochet. So into that stitch and into the one behind it, pull the loop through both of them and double crochet. So you do that all the way across. You can see that is joining our cowl together. Now you get, there's a bit of a ridge, kind of tricky to see at the moment. There's a bit of a ridge there. So if you want a flat seam, then you can always just stitch over the ends so they lie flat. But I quite like doing crochet, so I'm a better crocheter than I am a sewer. So I'm going to crochet these together. We will still need our darning needle at the end to sew the ends in, because you don't want those flapping down. So that's the last couple of stitches. Okay. And there we go. Might have had enough to do one more round, I'm not sure, one more row. So I'm going to thread that end through here, and then I'm going to pull it, and that just seals that knot. And then you can see that we have loop. Can't get it far enough away from the camera. I'll show you a model shot. And this is our ridge of crochet here where we seamed it, our crochet seam. If you want to turn it the other way around, doesn't show much at all. And there we go, a crocheted cowl.